measurements taken in England, the surface rock temperature was a chilly 6 degrees. A mere 400 meters lower, the temperature was 27 degrees, or that of a hot day. At twice that depth, namely 800 meters, it was 40 degrees, the heat of a high fever. So, no wonder that miners sweat when they tunnel in the ground. If they tunneled further, say to 6 kilometers below the surface, the rock temperature would be about 150 degrees Celsius. At 33 kilometers, it would be some 700 degrees. It's a hot planet we live on, not a cold one, not by any means. For the space visitors traveling here and there across our planet, they would examine the 1.25 million square kilometers of the Earth's surface that are covered with volcanic material of one sort or another. Whether they're of sulfur, or rich or poor in silica, or intensely acidic, or exuding lethal gas. They might be amazed, but what about us? Can this possibly be the planet on which we live and breathe and rear our families? Even if lava is flowing at, say, 20 kilometers an hour, it is still cooling, particularly on its upper surface. After a time, the flow can go below ground, as it were, having formed a crust of a roof above the flow. In time, of course, every lava flow will come to a halt. But even if the surface begins to look solid, there can still be lava rushing along beneath. Nothing can stop a lava flow, or so it would seem. Houses crumble, trees fall over, and mere people are extinguished. But what about this elephant? Was its bulk just enough to cool the lava, just enough to leave this island for its bones? People do live and have lived beside volcanoes, partly because of pressure on living space. From time to time they pay the price of doing so. That's when the monstrous carbuncle on their doorstep chooses to erupt. If it is boiling away, it's probably less likely to explode, having created a safety valve for itself. But there's no certainty with volcanoes, however relaxed they appear to be. So is it only shortage of space that makes people live so dangerously and with such awesome neighbors? One other answer, apart from having to live somewhere, is that the materials belched from the Earth's bowels are exceptionally fertile, being amply provided with phosphates, lime and potash. If they had nitrogen as well, they'd be the perfect fertilizer. But they're more than good enough for humans to take the risk, even if some further retching from their frightening neighbor can make life difficult until it settles down again. And then there's dust. Some volcanoes specialize in dust and ash, sending it around the entire world and certainly depositing it nearby. It may be very fertile, but from the point of view of the local inhabitants, such a fall of dust must in the early days be a tedious addition to the daily chores and make the people wonder if the risk has been worthwhile. They also never know when another sprinkling of dust might come their way. Lava may look more terrifying than mere dust, but dust can kill just as well because it asphyxiates. Those killed at Pompeii when Vesuvius blew up in 79 AD died from lack of air. The remains of humans and animals that have been found there, their bodies cast as if in concrete, show that they died gasping for a life that had become impossible in all the gaseous ash that had settled on their homes. The rivers, of course, try to cleanse the land, and by no means is water in a volcanic area always a welcoming spread of clear liquid, attractive to drink and to enjoy. As with the lava itself, the chemistry of volcanic lakes is extremely varied. Such waters have been investigated, sometimes to the detriment of the investigators and their equipment. We worry about our man-made pollutants, but the natural kinds don't look so very much better. Even a rubber boat is not always immune to the ravages of volcanic lakes, and it takes courage to set out in one. Testing the quality of the water is in itself a dodgy procedure. Even without such tests, it's known that to fall overboard would probably be lethal. Also, as substances go, is not entirely gentle on the hands. So, remembering that this planet is not always the dormant thing we tend to assume, have you been having a difficult time this year? On the portion of the crust on which you live, has the bus occasionally been a little late? Has that crack in the sitting room wall grown a touch since you last looked at and measured it? Have the tomatoes not done too well, and has the garden suffered from a slight lack of rain? Or do you constantly remember that the rock temperature, just 6 kilometers or less than 4 miles below your bus, your crack, your tomato plants, and you, is 150 degrees? As the planet itself is almost 13,000 kilometers from one side to the other, the thin skin on which life is tolerable is very thin indeed. By comparison, the skin on an apple is tremendously thick relative to its diameter. To say that we live on the Earth's crust is therefore a trifle misleading. The portion of the surface compatible with life is more akin to the thickness of a soap bubble than any kind of crust. But even that bubble skin is unfit for life when and where it bursts to let the lava through. The fact that lava flows and bursts from the earth might suggest the rock down below is also liquid and slooshing from place to place. It might be were it not for the tremendous pressures that raise the boiling point that keep the rock solid down below. But when that pressure is reduced, when a piece of the earth blows its top, then out comes the lava, red hot or pink hot, and ready for its own brand of effortless destruction. If we all did live on a place like Hawaii, we might be better able to comprehend our overheated planet, blowing off from time to time when the pressure becomes too great. The ocean floor there is 5,000 meters deep, and the islands themselves, entirely volcano-made, rise to a maximum of some 4,000 meters above the sea. There are 5 active volcanoes in the Hawaii group, and some of the lava flows at 20 kilometers an hour and travels for 100 kilometers before cooling finally to a halt. So I wonder if Hawaiians do worry less about the smaller things of life, the cracks, the buses, the tomatoes, and whether the rain was a little late this year. Although molten lava gives a glimpse of conditions down below, the tortuous shapes into which it gradually cools seem to tell of some other kind of world. A hell in its way, a Hades, an underworld, a fiendish alien place that has no bearing with our own and does its best to destroy everything that used to be on top. For all their fame, the volcanoes, whether collapsed now or upright, do not produce the greatest lava flows. Most hot rock emerges through fissures, and huge portions of our planet's surface were formed this way as the crust cracked open again and again to let out rock to flow upon the land. Like a piece of cooking that has gone horribly wrong, the crust cracks and lava quickly takes advantage. further thought, and as you're sitting comfortably, don't forget that you are on a planet. And you in your chair are turning a complete somersault once every 24 hours. And you are revolving at many hundreds of kilometers an hour on your piece of the spinning planet. And this planet is circling the sun at 30 kilometers a second. And our entire solar system, including us, is heading for the star Vega at 20 kilometers a second, and gyrating around the center of the Milky Way galaxy 15 times faster. So, are you still sitting comfortably on your overheating, volcanic, lava-ridden, spinning, somersaulting, gyrating planet? Or are you just overjoyed that you, wherever you are, can still stand upright and can do so on a part of the world that isn't boiling, steaming, exploding, gushing, or doing its very best to overcome the surface of the land? For our visitors, having seen our planet, having looked at a few of the 600 active volcanoes, having realized they're all time bombs waiting to do their worst, and having watched hot rock come tumbling down towards them, they might do well to conclude that somewhere else must be preferable, somewhere less active and more dormant, somewhere that didn't threaten to subdue them beneath hot and mobile rock. Let's give this trembling, exploding, smoking, burning, quaking, erupting planet Earth a miss and go off to somewhere else. So this was planet Earth, was it? Almost 13,000 kilometers in diameter. Lava temperature varying from 600 degrees up to 1400. Some 600 active volcanoes and thousands of dormant ones. Much of what is being spewed up is water, but hot rock is the dominant material. The noxious gases that accompany it, such as hydrogen sulfide, make breathing extremely difficult. There are 1.25 million square kilometers of this planet's surface that are covered with volcanic material. Much of the remainder has been covered with such material at some time in the past. There is no indication that the planet is cooling down to any marked extent. Departure seemed like a very good idea. There must be better planets in this Milky Way. As the visitors circle and take their leave, they can look down upon the gaping wounds on Earth, flowing blood red where the magma has been released from its confinement down below. They could look again at the speed of the lava flows, remember that such tracks can continue for 100 kilometers, and only then will they have lost sufficient heat for the rock to cool down and look like rock once more. They would see that the fissures produce most of the volcanic material, and would wonder perhaps how anything could survive as it tramples and rushes and spreads across the land. And we too, who live here, should wonder from time to time what a place it is on which we chance to live. Perhaps not along Oxford Street or up the M1 or around the long-since-dead volcanoes of Scotland, but in many regions of this planet there are still vigorous reminders of the heat and fury still residing beneath the minute crust on which living things manage to survive. Having watched this heat and fury for the past 30 minutes, it seems a miracle that anything survives at all. let alone you and I and all the other creatures for whom this place is home.